Hello everyone and welcome to the Modcast, another week of the Modcast. We're recording on the 27th of July 2017 and with me, again, as always, is my co-host Chris. Hey Chris.
What's going on?
Hey. Joining us today, Chris, is Flenarn, who's the lead developer of Fallout Cascadia.
Yeah, applause. Can you hear me clapping? Oh fuck, I think I just clipped big time, but
yeah.
We're off to a great start. Granted, you don't have me on here for technical reasons.
True.
I'm just here to get drunk.
You just wander in every week. Flenarn is one of those lead developers of one of those big projects where they make entire world spaces, like Fallout 4 Capital Wasteland and Fallout 4 New Vegas. Isn't that right, Flenarn?
That is correct, yes. We're one of those big scary teams.
Yes, which can be quite trepidatious, as because Fallout 4 New Vegas has just collapsed, we just found out.
Yes, it has, sadly.
Oh, R.I.P. Should I press F? Is it F to pay respects?
Press F for respect, hold on.
I'm pressing F like a madman.
Yes.
I'm paying much respect
to
Fallout 4 New Vegas mod.
Yes. Well, for the audience that doesn't know, Fallout 4 New Vegas, like our project Fallout 4 Capital Wasteland, was an attempt to make New Vegas in the Fallout 4 engine. Unfortunately, the team bit off more than they can chew, which you might know a little bit more about, Flenarn.
Well, I mean, what it comes down to is basically all three projects have insane ideas which we want to accomplish, like you crazy bastards are remaking Fallout 3, we're making a new Fallout and they want to remake Fallout New Vegas. And with that task comes a lot of work that you have to think of before you even start.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise you'll just end up in a shit show, and once you've actually done that work, you hit the hard part, which is like realizing that you probably have 2 or 3 years of hard active work to actually get it done. And it's a task a lot of people think they're up to, but when they actually get out and they like get a few months into development, realize, okay, I'm already growing bored of this and it's no fun anymore, and then just starts falling apart. And from what I saw from Fallout 4 New Vegas, it was a mix of lack of knowledge and lack of management, which just led to it falling apart slowly, sadly.
It's that thing, it's not just the lack of it, it's like 2 or 3 years. Who could be bothered with that? Especially if you're a mod maker and you live for endorsements. You go 2 or 3 years without any endorsements whatsoever.
Yeah, that's me. I just need to stick them right in my veins, you know.
I mean, I think we'll get our
just get that IV of endorsement goodness.
Yeah, but like when you're like a new mod author, you're just like, I'm 16. I've seen all these great mods. I'm going to recreate New Vegas, and you're like 16 and you have no idea, and you just go right for the moon, don't you?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not only like that you have, it's going to take 3 years, and that's a lot of time, but I mean, at that age, you have no clue what you're going to do in 3 years either.
Exactly.
Like, you're going to enter adult life, you're going to go move for a school or a job, or meet someone, or like, just, life is going to throw you around in a bag of money, or not money, like in shit. It's going to be hell, basically. Because that's what the early adult life is. And you have no clue what you're up to. So saying when you're 16, I'm going to do this for 3 years, it's never going to work. Like,
yeah, especially those years, like 17, 18 is a lot different than, say, 31 to 32.
Yeah, because, I mean, when you've gotten to that point, you're probably just going to do the same thing for 3 years. You're going to have the same work. You're going to do that, done.
Exactly. You have a routine schedule.
Yeah.
I'm not saying young people can't do big projects. I mean, Volition
Oh, no,
did
they
that.
Definitely can. It's just that majority of people...
Valscar.
Oh, yeah.
Valscar took a year, and he basically came out with that big island covered in grass. So
it was a fantastic island, though.
Yes. But these things take a huge amount of time.
I was going to say, and it got a ton of endorsements, I believe, too, right? And a bunch of coverage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was like, kid makes mod in dad's basement to join the test. That story writes itself.
Didn't he end up being hired by Bungie or something?
It's the classic mod author tale of, it's a Horatio Alger rags to riches story. It's every mod author's dream, right? To build the mod in their basement, get nationwide attention, and then get hired by a video game developer.
I mean, I wouldn't complain.
It's a Bungie story, I suppose.
Well, the rest of us, all we have left are these endorsements, and like, I don't know about you, I've tried to spend my endorsements at the restaurant, and they've just turned me away. I don't know why. I've told them I'm a famous modder with tens of thousands of endorsements, but nope, they're not impressed.
Yes, it's a rags to rags.
Like, same. They just keep talking about these money they want. I don't get it.
What's that about money?
No, like when you go to a restaurant, you try to pay with the endorsement. They just keep saying they want money or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
I don't know.
That's,
What kind of ridiculous
what's
notion?
the world coming to?
What kind of nonsense is that? Endorsements should be worth
Yes.
twice the average dollar or Bitcoin or whatever you use.
Look, I've got the perfect solution. We just need to join Creation Club. And we'll be as rich
They
as hell.
won't let us in. Well, they won't let me in. I've been banging on the door for like a month now.
Yeah, I think they won't let me in, and I know why they won't let me in, and so I don't know. But Flenarn, you've got like a whole different approach to that, because it says in your website that you are one of those dangerous, forever free crowd.
We are one of those, yes, forever free crowd. Ooh, spooky people. No, for us, like, it was a discussion we had a long time ago, almost 9 months ago, when like the project really kicked off. Like, if paid modding ever returns, what's our stance on it? And it basically come down to, we didn't want to be the guys that caused problems, like we saw when the Skyrim paid mods became a thing, where mods had, okay, this mod is free, but in order to use that mod, you need those 10 mods that all cost something. And as we have built a lot of frameworks for the modding community, like we're working on our dialogue framework and the skills and all that, we didn't want to end up in a situation like, oh yeah, you can play Cascadia for free, like the mod itself, but you'll need to buy these things before you can do that. Or, I don't know, it was just a hard situation. And it also came down to like, we're a massive team of over 120 people. How do we divide the money?
Yeah,
like,
that's
we can't.
like-
It's not possible.
You just divide it by 120, you know? You heard of this thing called Patreon? You just go to Patreon, you get the
Yeah,
money.
but we're not good at math over in Cascadia though. Like, that's where we fail most of the time, when the basic math comes into play.
Thank God scripting doesn't need that.
Oh yeah, it's like, whew. Because, I mean, Papyrus doesn't make sense anyway, so it doesn't matter.
That's true.
Yeah, that's the real problem, is placing a value, like a hard number. I mean, if everyone did equal work, you could just, like you said, divide by 120, right? That's
Yeah.
not the case. There's like,
But-
different levels of, work involved for each role, right? So at that point, it becomes a hassle to negotiate that, basically.
Yeah, like, no, I'm project lead, so I should get 75% of everything, and you rest can fight over the rest. Like, have fun.
90% at least.
I'm feeling generous, but it will be 90 in the end on the papers, I don't worry.
No, you should get all of it. You're giving them exposure. You're giving all the model makers exposure, so you should get all of it.
Oh, damn. Now we're talking.
There you go. So Flenarn, what made you actually want to, what marbles did you lose to start Cascadia? I mean,
Well,
Why
luckily,
did you
I
lose?
wasn't actually one who lost my marbles and started it all.
huh?
That's actually Alex, our founder.
Okay.
I came into the process, or the team, about 2.5 months after it started, when it was still in the concepting phase. And I quickly realized I was probably the most knowledgeable one in the creation kit and knew my way around the technical stuff. So
Okay.
it kind of grew naturally that I took over the position more and more.
So you're like the Stalin of mods.
You staged a coup,
You're just like-
basically.
You just found yourself in a position of opportunity and just took over.
Yeah, pretty much. I was like, yo, get out. This is mine now. No. Alex, is still...
lives in Mexico. If you haven't assassinated him already, and now
No,
you're just,
Alex lives in Canada. We've tried to assassinate him. Didn't work.
Oh well.
Border control there is a bitch.
So I mean, like generally, like if you look at your website here, it just generally has like it's a cool website. Chris doesn't have a clue what I'm talking
No.
about. And
I'm just
but generally,
I'm just looking at cat gifts right now, so
as I said, he wandered off the streets.
Yep.
So, but like you've got as well as below the Forever Free bit, it has a bit saying "Do it again, but better," and it
Yes.
says we are taking great pains here at the team to ensure that the shortcomings of Fallout 4 are addressed with Fallout Cascadia.
shots fired. Shots fired.
Shots
Everything
fired.
from the stunted dialogue system to the lack of special checks inside the game. We are carefully considering each criticism leveled at Bethesda's game and using the information gleaned to make Fallout Cascadia even better.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to explain that to us? Have we been modding the wrong game, please?
Probably. I don't know. I don't know what you're doing over in Fallout 3, but that's none of my business. No, but I mean, something... When Fallout 4 was released, I think we all were really, really excited to have the game. Like, we'd been waiting, 7 years for a new Fallout from Bethesda?
Yeah.
And we all thought it was going to be amazing. Because it looked amazing from E3, or BE3 as it was called. And all the hype, that train was fully fueled and we're just going forward. And a first playthrough of the game was a fun game. Like, it was good. Like, I have no problem saying it was a good game first playthrough. But once you had the first experience, you realize that was kind of it. Like, it didn't matter what I did in the game, because everything kind of came up to either you blow these guys up or you don't. It didn't have that depth, and I mean, something that made the early games, like New Vegas, really unique was you could play 50 times and still have a so different experience every time. And, I mean, that ranged from everything from the specials, or the skills, to the story, to the character, because in Fallout 4 you were presented with, you are Nate. You're a pre-war soldier, you talk like this, and you should look like this, because that's what we want you to be. And I tried playing a lot of different playstyles throughout Fallout 4, and what it always came down to, even if I changed the visuals of my character to look exactly the opposite of what he used to look like, it came down to the voice. Because no matter what, he sounded the same, so he somehow was the same character as I played the game as the first time, which somehow led to the actions of that character kind of being the same. He did the same things. And that was a major flaw, I would say, which Bethesda themselves have commented on and saying it didn't work the way we wanted it to, but they're glad they tried it. And I can't deny that they should have tried it. It was a good idea, didn't work out.
I kind of agree with you there, but the kind of things that you've been focusing on, I just want to let the audience know that probably most of all, you've been focusing on things like creating that dialogue similar to New Vegas in Fallout 3 or other RPGs, and creating a perk system that's similar to Fallout 3.
Yes. So what we basically did there, or what I did, was tell my writers to write with as many options as you want. And the scripters thought I was stupid as hell. They're like, nope, can't do that. And out of the blue came Nyanka, who we know for Def UI for Fallout 4, and basically went, why can't we do that? So he went off into his wherever he goes and hides, and came back a few days later saying, this is my prototype, it works. It's very basic, but it does the job. Which was quite astonishing, because we actually was in touch with Bethesda at that time, seeing if they had any, hints or scraps of code left that could help us, and they were very much prepared to do so, which was really amazing from them to be like, yeah, we actually want to help you on this. It's just something we need to get clearance from upper management. But it came down to, we actually didn't need that, and it was a great feeling to know, we had a really stupid idea that we wanted to do this. And we actually pulled that off, and as I said, something that made earlier Fallout games unique for your character was the skills, and as we all know, that system was ripped out of Fallout 4 and just replaced by a very simplified special system with just a perk list. So we always wanted to bring the old skills back, but we thought we didn't know if we could actually pull that off. It takes some serious skill to do that. Until we found Shadowshade, I hope I'm not butchering his name, who was already working on a system for that, but was lacking some part of the development, like the UI system and all such. So we paired up with him and was like, yo, we'll make your UI, make it all pretty and fine, and you work with us to make the system as a whole feature in the game. Which in the end has worked out fantastic. It's already even though we only have a small piece of content implemented and ready to be played, you can already notice there are things I could have done different had I picked those specials and gotten those skills, or other way around.
I agree with you that your description of the actual game, if you repeated it again and again, is probably right. If you did it one time, it's pretty okay. And then if you did it the second time, in which the game guides you to do so, it's just it's nowhere near as enjoyable as the first time. Yep. But I don't feel the problems are in the perk system and in the dialogue system, because I don't know. I've talked with Kris before, where I've seen in Skyrim you rarely had more than 4 things to say. Sometimes you only had 1 or 2 things to say. So while in New Vegas you might have had 10 things to talk about. And for good reason, because the game was kind of designed that way. The dialogue system, I don't think has a particular problem with it, and I don't think the perk system, as far as I can see, I think it might be designed in a poor way some parts, but I don't think it is a problem in itself. You know what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah, I know. I get what you're trying to say. In the core of the dialogue system, with having 4 choices isn't a massive issue. But something we realized, because we did have a little trial period before we told the writers to go all out, like, a lot of the times you don't need 4 options. A lot of the times it's good with 3. But what it came to was them having to add in a 4th option, because the game was built that way, which led to the can't pronounce the word. Like the fine thing with Fallout 4 where it was yes, no, sarcastic yes, and fuck you. Like, it always became the same 4 things, basically.
That was my option. I always picked the fuck you option.
Oh yeah, same. But I mean, after a while you realized, okay, this is just boring. Like, we have the same 4 choices over and over again. And just being able to actually not have 4 options, even that is a really big, like, game change for us. Like, we don't have to think of that 4th boring generic one, because even though it fills another dialogue option, it's not always good to have more stuff. Like, more content does not equal a better game all the time. Because that what it essentially became, we had to write in a 4th option. And then it just became a dull 4th option, because we didn't have a use for it, we didn't have a need for it at all. It was just there to be a filler.
Technically, you don't have to fill in the 4th option. Like, there's even a vanilla...
No, you technically don't.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, there's a vanilla one where there's only 3 replies. You could just delete the 4th reply, and then it'll leave the arrow blank, essentially.
Yeah, but it didn't look good.
Yeah, that's true. From a visual perspective, it's just... It kind of informs the reader, like, hey, look, we couldn't think of 4 options, so...
Yeah. So
you also don't need to, like, make it sarcastic. You could just have, like, 4 things, and they could be, correspond to left, right, and down, and don't need to be sarcastic, questions.
Oh, no. Of course you don't have to do that. But I mean, that's what Bethesda did. Like, even before you write something in, it actually says this is supposed to be the sarcastic thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. And even if we could fill it with something else, it would still be a forced thing we just had to write. And that's when writing goes from being a fun thing you do, which create great content, to being, okay, I gotta fill this in, and it becomes a dull thing.
I think I agree with you in the sense that when you're writing scenes for this game, as opposed to, like, Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 3, it becomes more like a movie scene. Like, it accelerates the scene a lot. Like, I don't know if it's, like, it's the same thing. It just feels like you're going through the scene faster. And where in Fallout New Vegas you were sort of pushed down to ask someone a lot of information, and then something dramatic might happen afterwards. But in this sense that you're sort of driven down a tree, and I can again agree with someone when they presented what's the merits of the old system versus the new system, and you're right that it becomes difficult to implement the old system of asking lots of information, like the scene at the beginning of Old World Blues, for example. It would be quite difficult to do that in the Fallout 4, but otherwise, I don't think it's as criminal a system as you might suggest it is. It's not like it doesn't undermine the game that much, and in fact, I think it might add things.
I don't know, because, I mean, looking at, say, Far Harbor, which I think a lot of people have considered to be one of the better DLCs, because it had way superior writing, and something we noticed as a really occurring trend there was a simple button that said more. A lot of times there was click more, which to us said, okay, the writers wanted to do more, but they had took a decision which said, no, you can only have 4, so they just cheated the system and added more. Like, having 4 dialogue options isn't a problem, per se. It's more so when you say you can have more, you can have less. That's when it becomes a problem. Like, you can probably write a fantastic game with only 4 options. We've seen it done before. It was more so setting the limit, like, nope, no more, no less. That it became a, like, creative limit towards how much you could do, and it became a creative demand on how much you had to do. And I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of times where we only have 4 options, because we don't need more, we don't need less. I just think Bethesda putting the hard lock on, you need to have a specific amount. Because either you have 4, or you have, 6, or you have 8. Because that's kind of what you have to do, because otherwise you won't fill the wheels and it'll get that visual glare.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an aesthetic problem. Like, if you want to have more than 4, you have to put the click more option and then, take you to a separate wheel. And so it's a different... I don't know if it's functionally different in that sense, because you're still getting the same amount of replies. having to click more, but aesthetically, just from an immersive standpoint, it's a little bit off, because your attention is drawn to the fact that there's 4.
Oh yeah, actually I have to click more now as well. It takes you out of the like feeling of this is a playable thing. This is not a game. It's like, I actually have to click more for the game to figure out there's more things to do.
The one thing I think Fallout 4, for me personally, like you're saying how it's a bad thing to like force people to make 4 replies, but like I was talking to Unoctium before, with Skyrim, they would have like 1 or 2 replies. It was kind of like a cop-out. Like, because they didn't have to do 4, they often went the lazy route and didn't do any more than 2 or even 1 a lot of times. And so I felt like with Fallout, there was times where there was padding, yes. Definitely there was instances where it was like yes, no, and then 2 maybes, right? That don't really mean anything.
Yeah.
But I think overall, I liked the decision to go with the wheel because it forced them to write more lines, which I think in general they needed. They needed that prodding. With the old system with New Vegas, it was a lot of top-level dialogue, top-level question-type dialogue, right? So it would look like there was a ton of responses, but each question didn't really go anywhere. So you would have a stack of responses, but they were all like one response that looped back to the top. Whereas Fallout 4, I feel like there were deeper branches. Like you would answer a question and then you get to another set of 4 before it converged and went back to the top again.
Well, because like Fallout New Vegas, that's what I was trying to say before. It was less so in Fallout 3, but New Vegas, every option along the top level was just, do you want more exposition, more exposition, more exposition? And it became a kind of info dump. And where Fallout 4 with the 4 options feels more like a dramatic scene. And it kind of makes it feel more dramatic, and it's just a kind of different way.
Yeah, it felt more like a conversation.
Yeah.
With different emotional replies, whereas New Vegas, you get like 6 info questions, you put them on the top level, it feels like your dialogue box is full, but in reality it's just 6 responses total and 6 questions total. There's no going deeper, really. I mean, on occasion, though, I don't want to like be reductive, but it felt like Fallout 4, there was more of that, where you're going lower and lower into deeper levels, as opposed to just having like 6 top level questions.
When he says deeper to me, I'm like, it doesn't mean deeper as in like the story was.
Yeah.
There was a few idiotic scenes, but like I felt like despite that, they got the conversational tone which Kris is talking about quite well down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
He's like, hell no.
I mean, yeah. But I mean, I don't know if that's more so like a reflection on them having to write more, or them sitting down and like, this is something we lacked from earlier games. We need to write more. We need to branch deeper. Because what's worth remembering is Fallout 3 was their first Fallout game as a studio. They didn't know how to handle the franchise, which showed in a lot of ways. I don't know, I think it could be a mix of both. Both that they were forced to write more, but also that this was their second go with the franchise. They did something way more new for them. And they just had learned with the process, going from Fallout 3 to seeing Obsidian do Fallout New Vegas, realizing what made that game great, going to Skyrim, a all-time hit, and then going into Fallout 4 with a lot of different perspectives. Like they had the voice protagonist and they had the 4 dialogue system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see. I mean, I'm not saying it's a perfect system, and I can see how it can be cynical in some ways. Like Todd Howard just sort of said, or whoever. Just said, I like the system for Mass Effect, I like that from a Telltale game, and just kind of pushed it on a system that wasn't really receptive towards it. But I still think it has some redeeming qualities, and I don't think the New Vegas system I don't think the old RPG system, rather, trumps everything.
No, God, no.
I think the companions were the main upgrade in this particular game. Like, you look at the companions in Skyrim and Fallout 3, obviously, New Vegas is made by Obsidian, so they're more experts at that thing, but the companions were almost on a BioWare scale in terms of the amount of dialogue, the amount of conversations you had. But I do agree that the one thing where they failed big time was in the manner of how you complete the quests. And I don't think it has anything to do with the dialogue, I just think it has to do with the choices, it's pretty much all violence. Every single quest almost is settled by violence, and even some like peculiar locations like the racetrack or the combat zone, it's just nothing but it's that craven violence that Dion warned us about when he watched the trailer and saw his song being used. But he was right in that sense.
Flenarn, you hear about this, that the Dion guy, the guy who sung Wonder, is suing Fallout 4?
Yeah, What I think happened was he signed a contract because they gave him lots of money. He didn't look into what he was actually signing for, and it was like, now afterwards he's like, oh shit, I didn't want this. No, sue them. No, but what I was going to say about the dialogue system that we've created instead isn't like, I wouldn't say it's a massive game changer to that sense. It's more so just removing the limit and the demand. Like, you can still have the voice protagonist and the like cutscenes between the player and the NPC. Like, that all works still, and the dynamic system is there. You can walk away and shoot them in the face whenever you want, as Todd said. It's just like, we just give you the ability to add more options if you want, without having that visual break off. Or like, if you don't want to write for and don't want that stupid sarcastic maybe, then you don't have to. Like, it's not so much changing the system, it's more like just removing the top and bottom limit of it, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean...
And the visual of the wheel, because, I mean, as far as the 4 dialogue system goes, my biggest problem was probably the wheel itself, how it looked. I really didn't like that. And also we removed the shortening of the phrase, like, haha, yes, and the player all of a sudden started reading a poem. That will be built in where you see what you're actually going to say.
Yeah, there's no point having the paraphrased options if there's no voice protagonist. Like, I'm assuming there's no voice protagonist in your in Cascadia, right?
Not in Cascadia.
Yeah, then there's no point. Like, the point of having the paraphrased options is like, so I don't read the option then hear him repeat it. There's a little bit of suspense there of what he's gonna say. I mean,
yeah, I get what they were trying to do. I don't like, and sometimes it did work out when it was just sarcastic and he just started swearing at this poor woman. Like, that was fun, but a lot of times, like, you didn't get a lot of info from a lot of options. It was like, maybe, we'll see. And all of them were like big dramatic speeches where he tried to tell everyone why the world is evil and dead. Like, well, that's not what I had in mind.
I mean, I personally like, I mean, ever since the Mass Effect introduced the voice protagonist, I've always liked it a little bit more for some reason. Just a personal thing. I mean, I definitely, like, Fallout New Vegas is one of my favourite games, but I've always felt like having a voice protagonist makes it more involving. Where when you're doing a silent protagonist, you edge more towards that RPG where, sure, you can identify with your character, but you're more of an observer as opposed to feeling the identification with your character. I mean, people feel identifications with their Skyrim characters all the time, but I just generally feel if your character is voiced, you have more of an identity with them. But at the same time, I feel Fallout 4, again, they didn't do it like the best way possible, as you might suggest, where your character, your Nate or Nora, as you said, have put too much of their own character into the story for you to make it your own character, as it were.
Yeah.
Where, like, if you had Shepard in Mass Effect, like, Shepard didn't like comment on things like without your input until Mass Effect 2's DLC. I don't know if you played it, so I might just be talking to the wind. But
No, I played it.
But like, but I regard Mass Effect 1 as the best example of that.
Yeah.
And the character didn't have 20,000 lines to say, so.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what direction they go for TES 6, because they're gonna need at least, I'd say, 4 for each gender, possibly. Or, I don't know. You have the British, American, Beast, and then so you might be able to get away with 3 for each side.
I don't know. I think they're gonna need more because an Orc and a Khajiit don't sound the same.
Yeah, I think with the Orc, they're probably gonna go with the American. I don't know. It'd be tough if you're trying to conflate like a bunch of races into one voice.
Yeah, I don't think they'll do that. Like,
but you're going to have to choose if you're going to make a personal story or you're going to make it Skyrim's. You can be anyone you want type thing. So, so at that point, you sort of, do we want a voice or do we not?
How many voices did Inquisition have?
100,000, something like that.
Oh
no, not
voice
voices.
types. I mean,
four voice types. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess they don't have as many races. It was like Kunari, human, elf. Yeah, that's about it. That's all I can think of.
But they had an American, a British, female and male, so they had that.
Yeah, but they don't have anything like Argonian. Although with the last game Skyrim, the Argonian had more of a human type voice anyway. I guess Khajiit might need their own voice. I think, yeah.
Khajiit would need their
I
own.
think they would just do one. If they were going to do voice, it would probably be one like Beast type voice, one American, one British, is my guess. But
I mean,
grab your pitchforks, people.
After Andromeda, why would you even bother making an RPG anymore? You got just make Fallout Shelter and card games, and you're set. You know, don't spend your money on $100 million dollar RPGs.
Yeah, I did not like Andromeda.
Right, Flenarn?
Sure. Yeah.
So, you know, it's time to move on to what you're actually here. I mean, like, so can you tell us a little more about Cascadia and you know where you're going with it?
So Cascadia is basically, as you said, our attempt to do Fallout 4, or the Fallout franchise justice, because a lot of people felt cheated from Fallout 4, with its lacking story and a lot and such.
More shots fired.
A lot of shots fired. Because we all want to find our son 24/7. So what we basically said was we want to make, or something that made New Vegas great was basically that they reflected that everything isn't still burning and catching fire and people living in shacks.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something Bethesda have a hard time letting go of. Like, they try to move forward, it shows, but I think they're kind of afraid to, like, what would the world actually look like when people start getting their shit together?
You've got a point there, yeah.
So what we've done is actually moved the time frame further, so we're set in 2329, roughly 50 years after Fallout New Vegas, both to not conflict with any existing law, because it would be hell if we had to say who actually won the Hoover Dam. I don't think people would appreciate whatever we said there.
No, they would not.
And it would also give us the chance to, like, really show a society that's not fighting with the basic struggles of, oh crap, the water chip is broken again, we're all gonna die, or yeah, these evil dudes in power armor are trying to poison us all through the water.
Mm.
So we set ourselves in Seattle and looked at what canon law there was for the region and came to the conclusion that there absolutely is none. Nothing at all. Which was a great liberty for us, because we could do whatever we wanted with the region. We could do basically what we wanted. But also, that was a bit of a problem, because we didn't have a lot of guidelines. Like, we didn't know anything was going on. Like, a lot of this Commonwealths, we know some basic stuff like, oh, we know the Brotherhood is supposed to have a bunker there, or, yeah, the Legion formed over there. But when it came to Washington, it's like, yeah, no, we know the Space Needle is there.
The Supersonics are not.
That was all we had.
Still. Sorry, basketball joke.
I mean, do you have any sports teams in there?
Oh yeah, we have some reference to sport teams.
Oh.
Seattle Seamen, for one. So, you know.
Here you're just telling us all of this grand idea, and you make...
Yeah, of course. Gotta have some fun. No, so what we've tried to do is we looked at the most, as I said, most complaints that were shot towards Fallout 4, like, you were given a very specific character. And it's something a lot of people probably enjoyed. I can understand the idea in it, but for a lot of us, it's not what Fallout is about. It's not about being handed a character, being told to go find your kid, be done with it for the day. Because in New Vegas, you were just some random mailman who got shot in the head, and then you got pissed off and find this dude. Or you didn't, and you just help these guys trying to get past these death claws or whatnot. So what we're doing is giving you a very basic backstory, kind of like what they did in New Vegas, where you come from there and you did that. Not that it really matters anyway. Like,
what's to stop you becoming like Fallout 4 New Vegas? I mean, that kind of thing of being an amateur always comes for you, because in the development world, there's always these things that are caging you in and insisting that you finish, because it's easier for you to finish than not finish, if you know what I mean. Where like, what's to stop you guys from hitting that wall? I mean, with Fallout 3 Capital Wasteland, we've said from the beginning, look, we might just stop and not continue because we know what these projects do. So, I mean, how do you sort of keep it together? How do you feel like you can get to it? How can you go 2 or 3 years without
giving up hope and lying down to die?
Pretty much.
Well, we very early, like, we had our main outline for the quest done a long time ago, or for the main story, and was like, okay, this is the minimum product we want to be able to ship. That's been our main goal from the start. Like, this is what we need to do, and it's going to be done by then as planned. We set ourselves a very generous goal, because we all know that saying, no, it'll be done in a month won't ever work. And that's what we've been focusing towards. And whenever we were like, okay, we actually did this faster than we thought, can we do anything else that's fun? But with always having the goal of getting the minimum viable product done. And with the massive support we've had from the communities, because we've had nothing else. A lot of fantastic people joining up to help out, like you and Dogtooth. And just being able to like work together with the community, because that's something a lot of other big teams haven't really done from what we've seen. Like over on the Skyrim side of things, for example, they just like kind of take their own stuff and just run away from everyone else. And like, no, we're going to do this all by ourselves.
Right.
And instead, we just went to the public like, we need a UI designer. And Nyanka showed up, and we were able to get the parts we needed with him completed and work through all that. Or like, okay, we need this thing. Is anyone out there willing to help? And people showed up, and that's a lot of what we've been going, or what we've been running on, like people just helping out. And as the year has been progressing, we've grown to a quite massive team.
Right.
And at this point, we've set up the system in such a way that even if all the leads of the project were to vanish, project or the progress would be able to keep continuing because the system has become quite automated and like you can pick up your tasks any time of the day and just keep rolling.
See,
like
I could do like a task-based system like that. I mean, with Capital Wasteland, I know you've kind of you've helped us out quite a lot, but in that regard, but. I mean, like generally, we were quite comfortable with the dialogue wheel. We're not really inclined. You've been gracefully offered your systems, but I mean, generally, I don't think any lines. There was ever more than 4 or 5 lines in Fallout 3, and you've offered like version control as well. But generally, our project kind of works in a way that's kind of disorganized in the sense that NAF just makes a lot of places, and then a bunch of interiors appear somehow behind it. And then I come in, going very slowly, saying, "Oh, should I script today? Should I not?" And then somehow we've got it kind of going. So it's kind of strange in the sense that both our projects are still going, but they're both done in completely different ways.
I mean, I think that comes down to the size of it all. Like, we still have the same size of the project in general, but I don't know how many devs there are on your team. From what I saw, like 20.
What would you call a dev? Like someone who could script?
Someone who makes a semi-regular contribution to the project.
Yeah, but like if they're a modeler and they make a NIF, would they be a dev if they just hand it to someone who implements it? Or is everyone a dev, no matter how
I would
much
say even
scope
modelers would be classed dev.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, somewhere you need to keep track of that, so you don't have 3 people doing the same thing. And when you're quite a small group like you are, I think it's way easier to keep track of everyone because there's not a lot of people. But like we have 120 people, we need a system to basically keep track of them all and like make sure 3 people aren't doing the same thing or no one is tending to that task because it got forgotten. And I don't know, just like we started off kind of like you guys were just did stuff sporadically and just did what we wanted to do every now and then. But as the project grew, it was like, okay, this is getting out of control. There are just random files being sent all over the place, and no one is keeping track of who's doing what, and just became a chaotic
Random
mess.
cat gifs.
Random cat gifs all over the place as well. So it just became for us like we had to set up our own system, and like we built our own development portal because we just had to. Like it was either that or let it go into chaos and become Fallout 4 New Vegas.
Shots fired. FTP respects. R.I.P. Fallout New Vegas. Raise your drinks.
Umbras and F.
FFF.
But like, Kris, how do you? I mean, you're kind of similar because you have a similar sized project, interesting NPCs and Tales of the Commonwealth. But you've done it entirely yourself. So.
Yeah, it's a little bit different when I only have to rely on me. I don't need to basically remind myself to set a schedule. I don't need to plan it out, because it's just the only people I have are just voice actors and then occasional contributors. So it's not like I need a spreadsheet or anything to remind me when to wake up and when to work and when to eat, except for when to eat because
we all keep
sometimes I
forgetting
forget that.
It's funny because you have to do your like quests and characters off the actual already real state of Fallout 4. I mean, that's there effectively.
Yeah, I mean, you always want the ability to write whatever you want, right? Like the system they're using for Cascadia is empirically better, I'd say. If you're taking out the voice protagonist, the pros and cons of that out of it, just being able to have less or more, I mean, that's obviously going to be better in terms of the amount of like creative options you have. It's not like the end of the world to have the 4 option
No.
deal.
Not
I
at all.
mean, it's just one more compromise you have to make, because I think modding in general is just one big compromise. Like if I had my druthers, I would probably just, make my own game with hookers and blackjack and whatever I wanted. But because I want to be able to use the assets that Bethesda has provided, so generously provided, you have to kind of compromise and do stuff in their world, tell stories using their system, and you're kind of limited in that regard anyway. So I don't know, ultimately, like, I just decided to kind of just go with what they gave me.
See, I kind of like it in the sense that, developing off the main world, like putting your characters in the Commonwealth or in the Mojave, is kind of a challenge, because you have to make your content fit within their content. So it's an interesting...
Yeah, that's true too. You want to make it seamless. Like, you don't want it to kind of like just pop up and say, oh, okay, that's different. As long as you kind of follow their template, it sort of fits into the world. But again, that's because I'm forced to make the mod in the world. I can't make my own world. I don't even know how.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different from Flenarn, what he's talking about, because he has a separate, it's almost like a separate game, right? Separate protagonists, separate timeline, separate world space. So it's a little bit different for me, because I have to make it into the game. I have to make it sort of seamless as far as any kind of transition. It has to fit there like it was part of the vanilla game to start.
Yeah.
But it's interesting in its own right. It's an interesting challenge as far as just trying to do that, or like trying to find voice protagonist files that fit. I mean, obviously it's more fun to come up with your own responses, but it's its own challenge. It's, kind of creative and fun in its own way. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not here to talk about me, right? Like I said, I'm just here for the free booze.
True. And we're going to give you some sandwiches afterwards as well. Send you on your way. So, I mean, why did you pick, like, the western coast for now? I mean, like, why not, like, eastern coast or the southern coasts or the northern coast? I mean, you generally wanted
the coast.
Yes, you wanted to recapture that western coast interplay / Obsidian feel.
No, I wouldn't say so at all, actually. Like, yes, it's the west coast, but looking at, like, where Shady Sands is located, and the environments around that, and, like, the characteristics of that, and then looking at Seattle and the environments around that, and, like, the feelings of that town, you're not gonna find a lot of similarities. Like, it's not a lot. It's more so that the east coast has been hammered out a lot now with Fallout 4. And the south part of the US was currently, or was by then, going to be handled by Fallout 4 Lone Star.
Yeah.
And it basically left, like, the northwest, or just going mid of the country, having no coast, which would be a shame. And I looked at the mid for a while, but I really didn't find a hook. Like, I didn't find something that really drew my attention. And then I stumbled upon Seattle and was like, okay. It has some really unique, like, Fallout-looking stuff. It has the Space Needle and some other cool little things around the town. And then actually starting to delve into the history of the town, I'm like, yeah, this would really work as a Fallout location. Like, the entire state's schooling system was founded by prostitutes. Like, that's something you can really play on in a Fallout universe. Like, it's fantastic for that.
That's pretty cool. That's something I didn't know about Seattle. To be honest, like, right up until you told me that, I just thought, Seattle, does it really... I mean, like, I feel like with all my criticisms, with everything, I've basically been Fallout 4's main defender here, but in the same sense, it's like, I felt like they overstepped the bounds with the Boston. It's just not really interesting as a post-apocalyptic location. And I kind of felt the same about Seattle. But you kind of run out of interesting places, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's something that's going to happen with the Fallout franchise in general. But I mean, that's a different discussion. But no, like, the more I actually dug into Seattle, it became just way more interesting. Like, the entire economical system was saved by a bunch of prostitutes. It was the entire province is named after an old Native American chief. Like, there's so much history that's really doesn't make any sense at all that it should go hand in hand. Like, the entire city burned down at one point, and they rebuilt it, everything, but then they did it in different levels, and people fell drunk off stairways that were 16 meters tall.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of stuff that's tragically comedical with the town, that actually would fit really well into a Fallout universe that could be portrayed in a quite interesting way.
I mean, they did that with New Vegas, right? And they certainly did that with Fallout 3 in Washington. I mean, they just reached into the past with that town, and I mean, whatever you could say about Fallout 3, they just got the setting of that so down so well. In terms of using this as a city, but like with the Commonwealth, I feel it's the opposite. They just seem to create some sort of futuristic Boston, and then
this
put
is
some
something
story
they
on
actually
top of it.
talked about in like one of their concept art, in the concept art book. They're like, because most of Boston didn't exist before the timeline divergence. Like everything pre that was just some wooden shacks and crap.
Yeah. I mean, I did like the whole Jetsons feel, but like that looked cool,
I dig it. It's
just,
cool.
Yeah,
but
otherwise it didn't really like what they've got a statue of. Who's the guy? The Paul Revere.
I don't know, but they have some British dudes.
Yeah,
Paul Revere.
Yeah,
and they have some British dudes. Like
they did use a lot of the historic locations. Like the combat zone used to be a famous like red light district, I believe, and. Yep. I forget some of the other stuff, but the whole railroad stuff, I don't know if there's any historical connection.
See, the railroad's more south, isn't it?
Yeah, railroad would be more south.
Yeah.
Yeah. Freedom Trail. What about
Freedom
that?
Trail, yeah.
I'm just throwing shit on the wall, see if anybody.
But yeah, like that's the thing. Like with Boston, there's not a lot of history that a lot of people are actually like find interesting in a sense that people would actually give a crap. Like, I'm not saying people would give a crap about Seattle history, but like. Tell them that the entire schooling system was funded by prostitutes. They'll at least find that like, that's a bit weird. Or like, no, the entire town is named after this dude that they actually end up killing. You're like, oh, alright.
The one thing I will say about Fallout 4 they did really well was Fenway Park, Diamond City.
Oh, yeah.
Because that baseball is just like ingrained in Boston culture, and just having Fenway Park be the location of the main city was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I do like how the Red Sox never actually won the World Series in that universe.
Yeah, they were
like
about
they were
to
about
win.
to win, yeah.
They were about to.
But like Seattle, though, I mean, what do you have? But you told me about the prostitutes, but like, isn't it just Microsoft and all these other companies, or do you have something like that? Or
Nintendo's there, right?
It's Nintendo, it's Microsoft, it's Boeing, it's Starbucks, it's Native Americans, it's prostitutes, it's a lot of like really old American settler stuff, chopping trees, building roads.
So it's like a really modern American city, but it's in the Northwest, and like there's a Northwest Gothic genre.
When I think of Seattle, all I think about is just rain, Space Needles and rain, and Starbucks.
That's actually fun though, because Boston gets more rain than Seattle on an average year, which is a bit weird. I don't know how Seattle got the portray that it had rains the most in the world.
I mean, that's why there's rain in Fallout 4. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bothered animating it. This shit takes too much time to do.
And no supersonics in Seattle. But
supersonics.
Again,
we have the Seattle Seaman.
Do you have any of that Pacific Northwest type Gothic type stuff? I really don't know what I'm talking about, but like totem poles come from there, right? All this.
Totem poles comes from that, yes.
Mm-hmm. And so you like. I mean, I think I might have suggested a few things when I was briefly on your team about like all these. You could have a lot of tribal stuff there that could kind of correspond with that kind of stuff. Do you have stuff like that?
We do have a lot of stuff like that. There's a part of the main story that kind of gets revolved around descendants to Native Americans and such, which is a really interesting setting to work with. Like the tribes in Honest Hearts in Fallout New Vegas was a really cool thing to see how they evolved, or how they didn't evolve really. Like they just picked up guns and stayed where they were. It's a really interesting setting and like characters and factions to work with, and it's also a nice homage to what actually founded the region and how they actually made it a thing. Which has also been a bit of a challenge to portray that in a way that's proper, which has been really dealt with by a lot of our writers by actually talking to people that are descendants to Native Americans, and one of our writers actually going to one of the tribes, spending time with them and like talking about them, what we plan to do and what they think about the general portrayal of it, and like how we could do that in a more proper way, but still keeping that Fallout comic feeling to it all.
That's the thing though, do you feel like you have to be sensitive when you're writing these things? Especially when you're writing a fantasy universe?
To some degree, I would say yes. But it's more so like getting the basics kind of correct. And just like, okay, so all Native Americans wore big feather hats. No, not all of them. But I mean, after that, there is a lot of play on stereotypes, because that's what the Fallout universe is. Like, people haven't gone to school for like 250 years. People would have forgotten a lot of this. But some were keeping, like, true. But I mean, also some, like, actually talking to these people actually has given us a lot of more information that we can work with. Like, there's a lot of stuff we didn't know about them, like, from like how they do day-to-day life, and like their history and stuff like that has given us a real different perspective on it, and allowed us to work more with them as a faction and keep building on them.
I mean, you mentioned Honest Hearts. I mean, all the tribes in that were descended from like small groups of people that like got lost. Like, one of them was descended from like a school bus, and like another was like descended from, you know, obviously roaming tribes and stuff like that. So I always get the sense when you're doing like a tribe in Fallout, it's like it's just a group of people that haven't read or learned anything for 200 years, I suppose. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. No, we're actually doing like proper tribes, so to say.
Right.
Like, they actually come from these people, kind of like the boomers. Like, they're proud of their heritage.
Sure.
They blow shit up. But these guys just carried on the traditions, because I mean, they were a group of people that stayed as a strong, quite clearly distinctive group of people for a good few thousand years, until us Europeans came and killed them all, of course. But
That's pretty cool. I mean, Kris, what's your opinion of stuff like that when you're trying to? I mean, do you base things in a real world setting, or do you feel like it's a fantasy universe, so anything's a go?
I mean, it depends on what kind of story you want to tell. If you want to tell something that's like comic, or, you know, you're just kind of fucking around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, then you could just play the stereotypes, right?
Yep.
But if you're telling something that you want to, you know, carry that gravitas, where it's like something emotional or something like that, maybe, yeah, you want to be more authentic.
Oh yeah.
But either way is fine. I mean, it's really up to what kind of story you're trying to tell,
Yeah.
right?
Because I mean, like, with the native tribes, we have a more like emotional part in their story. But like, when it comes to like the prostitute history of Cell, it's not so much emotion; it's more so for the laugh.
What did prostitutes do to you?
Very nasty things.
Yes, obviously. So I mean, like, are you doing similar with? Because I think a favorite part when I play these games is playing with companions. Like, I love the companions in Fallout New Vegas, and I like the companions in Fallout 4. Generally, like in every other Bethesda game before Fallout 4, as Kris said, they were just, you know, people that followed you around and attack things, and they might have had they might have had some characteristics, but otherwise, like, they might have had some defect. It was all surface level stuff that just was disappointing, and for me at the very least. And like, so what are you guys doing with that for Cascadia? Are you going with New Vegas, where there's like generally a couple hundred lines which generally revolve around the characters' quests and things like that, or are you going with the Fallout 4 model, where they generally comment on everything you do, and if you sit in the toilet or wrong or things like that?
I think we're trying to strike a mix in between the two, whereas they comment on a lot of things. But I mean, I think we all can say that at some point in Fallout 4, we got a bit annoyed at Piper for telling me not to pick up the trash, because I want the trash. Whilst in Fallout New Vegas, it could be kind of boring that the only times they commented on something was when they got to kill something, or when it was something really spectacular, like powering up Helios 1 and everything exploding around you.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm writing, writing a companion in Fallout 4, I find it like when they lay out the hard-coded stuff that you basically just have to write lines to, you become resentful because you feel like you have to write a line in every single reaction to every location, and sometimes you just go to yourself, the character just won't say anything here. In fact, he'll say something over there. and but otherwise, you generally you feel challenged to write 1,200 or 1,500 reactions. I might, so like, but I mean, I would love to do it like where the character actually says something of meaning instead of commenting on the trash. If you as you said.
Yeah, but no, we're trying to give them a lot of depth, like where you can actually explore their past. And like you can actually see them evolve with you, kind of like what you saw in New Vegas, where you kind of had to like track down their past in some cases and like towards the end of the quest line, they would actually be real people you talk to, it felt like. Instead of just being someone they were like, okay, you pay me, I'll shoot stuff for you. Would they kind of evolve and become proper travel companions, not just a follow-along?
Yeah.
But without becoming the annoying pick up the trash people.
I mean, Chris, you've written about 3 companions for Fallout 4 and numerous companions for the other games. I mean, how do you find it?
Well, it's easy to avoid the repetitive dialogue by just not writing it, because the way Fallout 4 works is they have these trigger boxes, right, that cue dialogue, and also actions that cue dialogue,
Yeah.
right? So when I was making the companions, I just avoided those, or I basically blocked the generic dialogue with a specific dialogue unique to the cell. So like if Audrey or somebody walked into the this place is dark generic trigger box, I put a specific line above, higher priority than the generic lines, and just conditioned it to the cell. But that's not a problem you would have in your own world space, because you're not dealing with vanilla trigger boxes everywhere.
No, exactly.
Vanilla action stuff too, you just don't have to make the dialogue,
Yeah.
basically, and they'll never say
You just
it.
don't do that. But it's also like trying to find the balance of not doing it too much and not doing it at all, which I think that will be a bit of a problem when we start writing out more character or companions, because you also gotta play on their personality. Like you can have one person that just won't shut up, like Piper,
Yeah.
and you can have someone that just doesn't like to talk.
I mean, it's definitely about game design, isn't it? It's clear with the Fallout 4 companions, they just wanted to show you how legit they were in writing. Like to the point where they wrote 1,200 lines. Said, look, we're legitimate writers. Look, here's some millions and millions of lines. But with with game design, like with a lot of lines for the companions in Fallout New Vegas, the characters said what they had to say in the quest at the right time, and it wasn't just like as surface level and as generic as Fallout 4's was, where basically every character had some same sentiment of what they said in every quest idol and things like that.
Yeah.
So
it's a ratio thing with Fallout 4, because they have a ton of unique lines. I think more unique lines than any of Bethesda's previous games. It's a ratio problem where the generic lines are repeated so often. Those are the ones that you kind of get stuck in your head as the thing that they're saying like 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
Should you really pick up that trash?
Yeah, the design flaw I think that they made is they put way too many of those generic triggers in every cell, rather than just do like maybe half or a quarter of the cells with uniques and leave the rest of the cells alone. They made it a point to have every cell have at least one environment generic trigger, I think, and then obviously there's the action triggers that happen way too often. There needed to be a delay on that to maybe only happen like once a week or something like that. But it's a ratio problem with those companions. It's not a problem having a lack of unique lines, because there are a ton of unique lines too, but they're just like drowned out by the generic triggers.
There's also the sense that like some of the quest idols, like when you're looking for Nick Valentine, for example, every companion would express the same sentiment, and that's looking for Nick Valentine. And like because when you have a game that doesn't really have any quest choices, every companion generally will agree, despite being from the Institute or the Brotherhood of Steel, or having a character element where that would be opposed to what you're doing. They generally will make you follow the main quest, and it really affects the game in a bad way when Kate is saying we've got to find this detective, or X6688 says we've got to find Nick Valentine. It becomes like these weird situations, if you know what I mean. So I'm just saying, does your faction system, or the choices in the quest, affect companions? So if you choose one thing, the companions won't like it, or other companions will like it.
Oh yeah, they will. Because I mean, what we've done is tied companions to all of the 3 main factions: the NCR, Republic of Cascadia, and the Red Leaves, and some of them won't talk to you after doing certain things with certain factions. And some of the non-faction related companions, they just won't say anything when you do something for a faction, because they really just don't care. And that's something we also reflect in. It's not so much no, we didn't want to write something for it. It's more that's how this person functions. When you talk to them and do their little quest, you can probably figure out this person doesn't really care much for the politics in the world, all they want to do is sit in their little shack and drink booze all day long. So you're kind of dragging them along with you.
I like that. Companions are one of my favourite parts of these games. So, I think we've come up just above the hour. So,
Yep.
I'm going to leave it on one last thing. I'm not going to ask you for when you think the mod will be released, but what I will ask you for now is where do you think you'll be 2 years from now?
Oh. I mean, hopefully we'll be working on something. If that still is Cascadia or not, I don't know. Or if that's getting our confidence back together after crippling falling apart or something. No. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, hopefully we will be done by then. Like, that's the
Wow.
somewhat of a plan. But it's hard to say.
Do you think, like, at the very least, you'll be, like, doing the quests and you'll see an end, but you'll be, like, maybe a third of the way through or something like that. Again, I'm not trying to put numbers or anything, but you'll be, like, actually have the capability to make this happen. Like, working on the quests, outlining this, outlining that. Technical challenges will be minimal. All it requires is grit. Do you see yourself doing something like that, or do you still feel you'll be wrestling with prototypes and concepts then?
No, by then we should be basically just implementing stuff as we go. Because, I mean, that's the good thing about having this big of a team, that a lot of the prototyping we can do all at once. Like, we already have the main quest written as it.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, we know which part will be the most tricky and which ones we're like, we don't know if we can do this. But, I mean, having the team of this size, we can, like, okay, you 5 people, try to do that. If it doesn't work, try to break it in a different way. And we can prototype a lot of this stuff. And, like, as soon as we just get our dialogue framework 100% complete and the skills, I think we're honestly ready to start implementing the main quest. Like, we've already started in points.
Cool. Well, Flenarn, thanks for joining the podcast.
Thank you for having
Kris,
me.
too, thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thanks. Hopefully I will not have to press F on Cascadia.
Hopefully, we'll go 1 week without a mod team dying horribly.
Let's hope for that.
Yes.
The F key is like worn out. It's basically just a black key
Yes,
right now.
my F key has been abused to death. Much like Fallout 4 New Vegas. But in the meantime, again, thanks for joining us. And that will be us out. Goodbye, everyone.
Oh.
Okay.
See it.